Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're exploring something, I think it's quite relevant for anyone trying to make changes without feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, exactly. That feeling of just wanting to understand something thoroughly, but, you know, efficiently.
Precisely. So we're looking at this idea of a modicum, basically, just a small amount, and how tiny, consistent actions can actually lead to, well, surprisingly big shifts in life.
And we've got a great source for this. It's called a Modicum of Frugality. It's a personal story which really helps illustrate the point.
It does. So our mission today is pretty clear. Let's understand how these small, maybe even seemingly insignificant frugal habits can stack up and have a really significant long-term impact.
Okay, so diving in, what struck me first was the author's definition of frugality. It wasn't about self-punishment or anything like that.
Right, not deprivation.
No, exactly. It was framed as a conscious decision to save. And it was driven by a very specific goal, wanting to own a home eventually.
Okay, so having that clear why makes a difference?
The huge difference. Plus, the author mentions they just didn't have many expensive interests, pulling them towards spending right away. So saving felt, well, maybe not easy, but more natural.
That's interesting. It suggests maybe our inherent tendencies or lack of certain desires can play a role in how easily we adopt habits like saving.
Definitely. It wasn't like they were fighting constant urges to spend.
Yeah.
Which brings us to how they did it.
Yeah, let's talk about the implementation. The author really talks about it being gradual, right? It wasn't some, overnight switch.
Not at all. Small things, done consistently. And the key was that over time, these actions felt less and less like a burden.
Yeah.
They just became normal.
Kind of like building muscle, maybe. The first few attempts are tough, but then it gets easier, becomes part of the routine.
That's a good analogy, building momentum.
Yeah.
And then comes the payoff, the sort of aha moment.
Which was?
The point where all those small accumulated savings actually added up to enough to buy a home, a minor fixer-upper, as they put it.
Wow. So not necessarily the dream palace straight away, but actual home ownership. That's a massive life change from what started as small, frugal choices.
It really is. And it shows how we might underestimate the cumulative power of these little daily things we do or don't do, like not buying that extra coffee or whatever.
And it didn't stop there, right? They also mention the longer-term picture.
Yes, the financial benefit. The fact that home ownership often leads to building equity over time as the property value hopefully increases.
So those initial small acts of saving weren't just about getting the house. They were also planting seeds for future financial growth.
Exactly. Laying groundwork. It's a powerful example of present actions unlocking future potential.
It makes me think of that William James quote, you know the one? The art of being wise is the art of knowing what to overlook.
Oh, yeah, that fits perfectly here. How does it connect for you?
Well, in this context, it seems like focusing on those small, manageable steps, the daily frugal choices, and overlooking the huge, potentially overwhelming scale of I need to save for house deposit.
Right. Don't get paralyzed by the mountain. Just focus on the next small step upwards. Overlook the distractions. Overlook the immediate gratification you're skipping.
Yeah. Choose what small effort to make today. And the underlying principle seems to be that these small thoughts, small actions, when you repeat them, they really do compound.
Like that dripping tap idea.
Yeah.
Drip, drip, drip. Eventually, the bucket's full.
Though the author does acknowledge, it can be discouraging sometimes if you don't see results immediately. Big results, anyway.
True. Patience is key. But they also touch on that kind of nothing-to-lose feeling with small actions. Often the initial step is low risk. Doesn't feel like a massive sacrifice right now.
Which probably makes it easier to stick with psychologically. It's less intimidating than saying, I'm going to slash my budget by 50% starting tomorrow.
Absolutely. Manageable steps are more sustainable. You build confidence, you build a habit, it reinforces itself. Less decision fatigue, too.
Okay, so wrapping this up then, the main takeaway really seems to be the underestimated power of a modicum of consistent effort.
Yeah, in this case, focus through frugality, leading to a major life goal, like owning a home and building that longer-term security.
It just highlights how small, sustainable actions, when they're pointed towards a clear goal, can be incredibly effective.
It really does. Which kind of leads to a final thought maybe for you listening.
Okay.
Just reflect on this.
Okay.
What's one small, consistent action you could start doing? It doesn't have to be about money. It could be learning, health, anything.
Just one tiny thing done regularly.
Yeah. What's one small step you could take starting today or tomorrow that if you stuck with it, might just lead to a surprisingly significant positive change down the road? Something to think about